A voice moved through the room from the doorway, calling names without stopping.
Lola Stardust!
Jordan rose from the chair to turn into the light.
Here, babe.
One hand settling at his waist as he let the red catch and shift. He held it a second, then sat back down, already returning to the mirror. The call moved on.
Bantanoir?
Marcus reached up and took hold of the white cloth. He pulled it away in one motion.
I'm here.
The black held as one piece, the stones catching where they broke the surface. The line staying clean as he turned just enough for it to read. A brush paused midair. Someone near the door stopped, then shifted their stance to see more clearly. Jordan held it a second longer than he meant to, then turned back, his hand going to his own strap, adjusting it once more before letting it settle. This is Men Being Too Intimate, Season 4. 2 dresses. The piano sat slightly off-center in the room, angled toward the bar while voices drifted in from Bourbon Street outside. Jordan played and let the sound carry through the tables. Conversations continued through the songs. He wore the fitted black suit the venue required, the tie pulled straight beneath the collar. When the song ended, he left his hands on the keys as the applause came. He nodded once, stood, and stepped away from the piano.
Don't go far, we need you back again.
Hey. Thought you might be into this.
The bartender caught him halfway, sliding a folded flyer across the counter. Jordan took it, opening it as he leaned against the bar.
That's new.
Drag competition. Open call. Sign-ups tonight.
Yeah. Figured you'd hear about it anyway.
Jordan smiled.
Thanks, Boo.
He said, folding it once. Behind him, someone called again.
Jordan, we need you again playing.
Hey, not yet.
The bartender said. Jordan glanced over. The bartender reached across and straightened the tie in one quick motion. Jordan lifted his hand and blew a quick kiss in his direction, then turned back toward the piano. He looked out once, catching the room as it was, and placed his hands back on the keys. Marcus drew the measuring tape across the man's shoulders, holding it in place with one hand. The tape shifted as the man adjusted his stance, and Marcus steadied it with a light touch before continuing.
When do you need it? Next month, wedding's first week of July.
You'll have it before then. I'll make sure it sits properly. I wasn't sure about the colors. Black too formal?
Black works.
Marcus said, cutting in without breaking the tone.
It keeps the line sharp. You won't have to think about it. It'll read right.
Come back next week, I'll have it ready.
The man thanked him and stepped away. The door closed behind him, the sound carrying briefly before the room settled again. Marcus stood for a moment, his gaze dropping to the table. He reached forward and pulled a garment from beneath the folded fabric, lifting it carefully so it didn't catch. The material fell open as he held it up. He stepped toward the mirror and draped it against himself, holding it at the shoulder with one hand while the other adjusted the line along his side. The fabric shifted as he moved. Then he lifted his chin a fraction. His mouth moved, the shape of something unspoken forming briefly as he adjusted the line at his shoulder. Jordan pushed the door open and stepped into the club, the sound inside carrying differently from the street. A few people gathered near the bar while others moved toward the front.
Sign-ups are up front!
Someone said as he passed. He lifted a hand in acknowledgement and kept moving, his attention shifting from one person to the next. Marcus stood at the table, the rules clipped at the top, his attention moving through them without pause. Someone pushed past him to reach the board. The pen lay to the side. As Marcus reached for it, Jordan stepped in beside him at the same time. The board shifted slightly under their hands.
You signing up?
Yes, I am.
Jordan looked him up and down.
Good luck, babe.
The read quick and direct. Marcus kept his grip on the pen.
Not from you, honey.
Jordan's mouth shifted.
That attitude won't help you here.
Marcus looked at him.
We'll see.
Girl, you have no chance.
Jordan laughed. He stepped away as he said it, already turning toward the room. Marcus lowered his attention to the page and wrote his name in one clean motion, his position set directly beneath Jordan's. Then, without lifting the pen for long, he closed the space between the two names and added, just beside Jordan's line, a small, precise note. Bitch. Jordan had already moved deeper into the room, pulled into something else without staying where he had been. Jordan stepped into the thrift store, The racks close enough that fabric brushed his arm as he moved past. He went straight to the formal section. Prom dresses filled the rack, packed tight enough that they resisted slightly as he pushed through them, moving down the line until the color changed. Red. He slowed there. He pushed a few aside. The hangers clicked softly as he moved them, pulling one forward just enough to check how it fell. Another came forward, lighter, too thin through the body. A tag caught against his fingers.
Everything in the back is half off.
He turned it over, read the number, then checked his pocket. The count already running.
That include this?
He asked, lifting one dress.
If it's tagged, it's included.
He reached into his bag and pulled out a wig.
Let me see that.
The shop owner's voice cut through. Jordan looked over. She had already come around from the counter, reaching for the dress before he passed it over. She turned it once, then again, checking the seams.
I've got something you might like,
she said, handing it back. She disappeared toward the back. Jordan set the wig into his bag, his attention shifting briefly to the rack again, before returning to the space where she had gone.
I'll give you this one for half, 40.
She came back with a dress, red but brighter, the fabric holding its shape more cleanly as she lifted it.
30. It's been here a while.
35.
Done.
Jordan watched her for a second, then nodded once.
Go on, try it.
Jordan took it and turned toward the fitting rooms. Marcus worked at the table, the dress already formed, the structure set earlier and now being refined. The neckline holding clean, the waist fixed, the hem marked but not finished. A tray of stones sat to the right, sorted by size. He didn't reach for them yet. The door opened and the man from the fitting stepped in with his jacket over his arm.
Hey, Marcus, is my suit ready? Just in time.
The man took it and stepped toward the fitting room, his attention catching briefly on the dress on the form as he passed before moving on. Marcus turned back to the table and picked up the pins, setting them within reach as he cleared a small space beside the mirror. The curtain moved again, and the man stepped out, adjusting the sleeve as he walked to the mirror. The jacket settled across his shoulders as he stopped. He checked the front, then the line through the waist, turning slightly to see the back.
Stand straight.
The man did, and Marcus adjusted the collar once, then the shoulder, smoothing the fabric only to confirm it sat where it should.
How do you feel?
He asked. The man looked at himself again and nodded.
Perfect.
He looked at the dress.
You do dresses too?
Not here.
He glanced at the form.
For someone special?
No.
Yours?
Marcus paused just long enough to answer.
I'm entering a competition.
The man nodded, following now, then turned and headed back to the fitting room. Marcus closed the garment bag partway and set it aside as the curtain moved again. The man stepped out, handing over the trousers, and Marcus took them, folding them cleanly before placing them into the bag, aligning them with the jacket before zipping it shut. He lifted the bag and held it out.
When is it?
He asked.
Next weekend at the Garnet Club. I'll come by with my fiancé.
The room settled again. Marcus returned to the dress, his hand moving once along the line before he lifted it and laid it flat on the table. Jordan set the red dress on the counter like it already belonged there and cleared space for it, sliding a pallet aside. He took the center station. He leaned in first, working the base across his face. Powder followed, then contour, the shape building without pause as he adjusted pressure and angle in the same breath. He wiped a corner with his thumb and redrew it cleaner, the edge sharper the second time. When he was done there, he reached into his bag and pulled out the wig, lifting it once before setting it on his head, adjusting the front until it sat where it needed to. He pressed it down, checked the line, then tilted his head slightly, watching how it fell against his shoulders. Only then did he step into the dress. The red settled over him, catching the light as he moved, shifting darker where it folded and brighter again when he straightened. It didn't sit right the first time. He adjusted the strap, then the waist, then left it alone long enough to see what it would do without him. He reached for the inserts and set them in place without hiding the motion, lifting the line through the front until it carried evenly with the rest. Across the room, Marcus stood at his table with the dress still covered, a white cloth draped cleanly over the form. His tools were already set. He worked closer to the mirror now, building the eye, each line placed once, then corrected only where it didn't sit right. The lashes came last. He set them carefully, pressing them into place, then held them there a second longer before letting go. Jordan caught it in the mirror first, the white cloth holding its shape while everything else shifted around it. He turned then, looking directly, trying to read what sat underneath. Marcus didn't look back. He reached up and took hold of the cloth. A voice moved through the room from the doorway, calling names without stopping.
Lola Stardust?
Jordan rose just enough from the chair to turn into the light,
Here, babe.
one hand settling at his waist as he let the red catch and shift. He held it a second, then sat back down, already returning to the mirror. The call moved on.
Phantom Noir?
Marcus reached up and took hold of the white cloth. He pulled it away in one motion.
I'm here.
The black held as one piece, the stones catching where they broke the surface. The line staying clean as he turned just enough for it to read. A brush paused midair. Someone near the door stopped, then shifted their stance to see more clearly. Jordan held it a second longer than he meant to, then turned back, his hand going to his own strap, adjusting it once more before letting it settle. Marcus didn't look toward any of it. He lowered the cloth and returned to the table, pressing the last placement into line without looking up. The names continued past them, the room tightening around the calls as people checked themselves.
30 minutes.
The voice added. Jordan's eyes lifted from the mirror just enough to catch Marcus across the row. Marcus looked up at the same time. The glance held for a fraction, not long enough to become anything more. Jordan turned back first, adjusting the line at his shoulder. Marcus returned to the mirror, his hand settling once along the edge of the dress. A number ended with a body low to the floor and a final hit that landed a fraction ahead of the beat. The crowd came up at once, hands lifting, voices breaking over each other, the front row leaning forward. A sweep of light crossed the floor, a quick reset, and the next call came through.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lola Stardust.
Lola entered in red, not rushing the first step, letting the light catch her as she crossed toward the piano set off to one side.
Oh, yeah. Keys under my fingertips, quiet but they listen. Name not on their lips yet, give it one transition. Watch the light align the second that I start. Lola Stardust, now they know just who you are.
The front row shifted, the movement small but enough, the sound drawing them in before they realized it had. Lola lifted her head on the last word, not to meet anyone directly, just enough to let the line land beyond the keys. At the wing, she slowed just enough to hold her place. Phantom Noir was already there. Lola's eyes found her. She didn't smile. Then she turned away first, lifting a hand to adjust the line at her shoulder as if nothing had passed between them.
Ladies and gentlemen, Phantom Noir.
Vanta entered. She crossed to center and stopped. The room adjusted around her.
No need for the light. Every line is placed just as I planned. Silence leans in closer. Phantom Noir at the center of the dark.
At the wing, Lola adjusted the line at her wrist, not looking at first. When the note carried, her eyes lifted. She held it longer than she meant to. Vanta finished without extending the last note. The applause came in stronger this time, not louder, just more certain. Vanta stepped back once and exited without looking out. At the wing, their paths narrowed. Lola was already there. She didn't move. Vanta approached without slowing. The distance closed until it forced a decision. Lola shifted at the last second, just enough. Vanta passed through without breaking stride. Their shoulders brushed light, but not accidental. Lola turned her head slightly as Vanta moved past, following the line for a second before letting it go. Behind them, the next name was already being called, the room moving again. All 12 were called back. The stage that had felt open before narrowed as they filled it, bodies adjusting in small, deliberate shifts, each person finding a line that held without appearing to take it. Lola stepped in from the side and took her place. Vanta stood a few steps away, already set. The room carried the energy from the performances, but it sat differently now, pulled tighter, waiting for something to break it. The host stepped in, looking down at the card.
All right, out of 12 tonight,
She paused, checking again.
we have a tie.
She looked up with a small shake of her head. The reaction rose quickly, then folded back in, attention shifting across the stage rather than holding it as one.
First, Phantom Noir.
Vanta stepped forward in a single clean movement. her presence settling where it landed. Lola's hand moved to her waist, tightening the line once as she held her position.
And Seraphine Blaze.
Seraphine moved immediately, stepping out with speed. Her movement already larger, already asking for the room. Lola's gaze dropped for a moment, her breath catching just enough to register. Her hand lifted toward her face, stopping short as if holding something in place before it could show. The host looked back to the card.
We have one more, Lola Stardust.
Lola's eyes widened before she could stop it. Her hand lifted instinctively, covering part of her face for a second before dropping as she nodded once toward the judges.
Three-way tie! That means only one thing. Dance battle for the crown. Show us what you got. Claim your crown, ladies.
The music came in harder this time. Seraphine moved first, dropping low without hesitation, the floor taking the impact as she rolled through it and pushed back up. The reaction came instantly, voices breaking out as she rose through it with momentum. Vanta didn't follow the burst. She stepped once and turned the line through her body, the stones catching only where they broke the surface before settling again. The movement stayed measured, contained, her center never shifting even as the room moved around her. Lola came in between them, starting smooth, letting the rhythm settle into her before she carried it forward. She crossed toward the front in a clean line, one turn unfolding without force, her gaze landing where it needed to before she moved again.
All right. Your winner, Seraphine Blaze.
The reaction broke sharp across the room. Seraphine cried immediately, both hands flying over her mouth as she bent forward. Lola's gaze lifted once, catching Vanta across the line. Vanta looked up at the same time. The stage held the result. The room moved on. Lola reached up, fingers finding the edge of the wig. She lifted it cleanly, the weight coming away in one motion. In the mirror, the face held for a moment longer. Then she reached for a cloth. The color broke first at the edge of the eye, the line softening as she wiped through it. Across the room, Vanta stood at her table, one hand already at the back of her neck, releasing the closure before lifting the wig free. The room moved quietly around them, voices lowered now that they no longer had to carry. Jordan looked at himself in the mirror. Then he reached for his shirt. Across from him, Marcus finished at the mirror, setting the cloth down before reaching for his things. Jordan stepped away from the counter first, crossing the space without drawing attention to it and stopping just off Marcus's shoulder.
You looked good in the dress.
Thank you.
He glanced toward the folded red dress.
If I can help, your dress needs tightening through the waist.
Jordan's eyebrow rose.
Come by, I'll take a look. No charge.
Marcus turned toward him and held out a card. Jordan took the card and looked down at it.
I like that. Thank you, Marcus. By the way, I'm Jordan Cruz.
At the far end of the room, the winner passed through, the gold already half removed, the movement still carrying something from the stage even here. Jordan's eyes followed it briefly. Marcus didn't look. They gathered their things without coordinating it, moving at different times but finding the same pace once they reached the hallway. The door opened. Jordan slowed first. Marcus matched it. They looked at each other then, not through a mirror this time, not across a line.
Be proud, boo.
Marcus stepped in. The hug came without hesitation, brief but solid, the contact landing clean before they pulled back. Neither of them made anything of it. They turned the same direction and kept walking. An ESFP moves through the world by feeling it. Moment by moment, taking the room as it is, turning instinct into presence. For Jordan, nothing matters unless it lands. An INTJ moves differently, line by line, refining what's there, removing what doesn't hold, shaping the result before it's seen. For Marcus, nothing stays unless it fits. They set their boundaries early, what to show, what to control, what not to give away. But somewhere between the stage and the space behind it, the line shifted. An ESFP and an INTJ. Different ways of dressing the same moment, but sometimes what's put on isn't just for the moment. It changes what stays after. This is men being too intimate. Or, for tonight, women being too intimate. Season 4. 2 dresses. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more stories on gay audiobooks. Also my short novel, Men Being Too Intimate series. In the Hands of Discovery, Deep Red Decant, Under the Acacia Trees, and more are now available on Kindle Unlimited. You'll find the link in the description. YouTube membership is now open, behind closed doors. Early access to upcoming stories, occasional behind-the-story exclusives. If you want to support me, please do join in. Thank you.